Just give me, I guess, your AI. What do they call that? The AI summary at the top of a page. Now, give me your
TLDR.
Give me your AI summary of what the hell's been going on with the Patriots. A lot of moves on the defensive side of the ball, which seems to make that side of the ball better, but also Drake May seems to not have a whole hell of a lot more support, and we thought that might be coming.
I mean, not bad, really, when you consider the way the day started, and even before this, like the last week or so, and in particular yesterday, when every freaking name seemed to be flying off the board. He's like, oh, there goes another. And oh, no, he's not going to be there. And you're like, this is what happens now. I tried to warn you guys in terms of like the free agency thing. It's just not what it used to be. And so many of these guys end up not getting here. And teams have money now, or they have better ideas of how to work their cap and use void years and all those sorts of things. But to be able to rebound from what appeared to be Milton Williams signing with Carolina and to be able to steal him back, I think was massive, because I like Spillane. I like Carlton Davis. I have some questions about Harold Landry, but like all of a sudden you put Milton Williams in that group, and that was one of the guys that was at the very top of their board, like got to have him, and they got him. And to do it the way they did it, I think was huge. I think it just sends a message to the guys on the team. I think it sends a message to the fan base. Like, we told you we're going to be aggressive, and we're doing that. We're trying to fulfill the promise that we made to you, and it actually, in this case especially, it worked out.
So, Mike, I know you were in on and had been talking up the Chris Godwin to New England angle for a while, exactly how much it may cost, what the expectations should be. It doesn't surprise me that they went defense or prioritized defense first, because I feel like between those two kind of shallow wells in this free agency offseason, that was where the better talent was. But Godwin looked to be their offensive prize, and he stays in Tampa. Do you know exactly how much the Patriots offered or how badly they tried to get him to leave Tampa for Foxborough?
I don't know what the offer was. I do believe they were willing to go higher than that. And this is, again, the problem. Like, it's like, oh, well, he did kind of get out there. I mean, yeah, there are back room and back channeling and all those sorts of things. But the guy is comfortable in Tampa. He likes playing with Baker. He likes playing for Todd Bowles. He likes playing alongside Mike Evans. He's familiar with the medical staff, who, obviously playing a big role in his recovery for a second time in 4 years. So, that was always going to be the hard part of this. He liked Tampa. So, something was going to have to go really wrong there for him to actually be out there and shopping himself to the full extent. So I just think it was going to be a difficult thing. They can signal how much they want him and what they're willing to pay him, but I think he's really comfortable there in Tampa, and I think that really is why you're seeing the reports from whoever he's taking $20 million less to stay there.
Mike, a two-part John Dennis-style question here for me. In response to what I think are the two best signings, and that's Milton Williams and Carlton Davis, really good players. The Robert Spillane would be the second one. Milton Williams, does that say anything about Christian Barmore? Do they envision a two-headed beast on the inside, or are they worried they're not going to have Christian Barmore? And then for Robert Spillane, does that mean anything for Jawan Bentley? Is there a chance he's not a Patriot for very long?
I think they'll start with the latter one first. I think there's a clear change in direction we've talked about in terms of like being four down front, being a more penetrating one-gap team versus the two-gap that we've been familiar with for the last 20-something years and drove guys like Richard Seymour absolutely bananas. Like, can you just let me go get the quarterback? Obviously, it worked. They won rings, but that sort of signals that change. And if you look at Vrabel's past history, David Long is a guy that I'll bring up all the time. He's 5'10", 220, played in the middle of that defense. Like, he wants speed. He wants sideline to sideline. Spillane is that. I think Jamin Sherwood was ahead of Spillane on their wish list, but when Sherwood stayed in New York yesterday, before he even got to free agency again, this was the obvious pivot, and it's a good pivot. He's a good football player, and past history, Vrabel signed him in Tennessee, so that's where he started his career, and he played under Josh McDaniels for a year in Vegas, so they definitely have plenty of familiarity and know what kind of kid he is, and by all accounts, and I think Brian Hoyer retweeted what I had tweeted out about Spillane. It was like one of my favorite teammates, like just the dude plays with his hair on fire, and he's been healthy the last 2 years. 158 tackles, 148. Like, that's some elite production from there. So I do think that, unless they want to kick Bentley to a strong side linebacker type, that could very well be a sign of things to come for him or Jelani Tavai or both. And then in terms of Williams, look, I don't, and I think they signaled it again at the combine. Like, I don't think they know about Barmore. Like, he's working out. Okay, good. He hadn't played football yet, and the blood clot thing was unexpected, obviously, and there was no real way you couldn't make up for the loss of a guy that you just signed to a massive contract extension last year because it happened, end of July, beginning of August. Get him back for 4 games, and then for him to have it again, I think that's a massive question. I don't know that you can definitively say write his name in pen. I don't know that you can do that. But I don't think Milton Williams still was on their board regardless, because again, to the point of, I think coming out of the combine, most people thought that he was actually the best player in this class. In terms of the potential upside, the age, the whole thing, he's going to be the guy that's going to get paid. And if he continues on his career track, you're going to get a Pro Bowl caliber player there. So I think he was always a part of what they wanted to do. But now it does give them extra insurance, if you will. Last year you had to play Akawali 60% of the snaps, and Eric Johnson and Roy and all these guys, they were signing off the street. And now, can have a better plan. I'm sure they'll probably take one in the draft at some point as well, because it's such a good class for defensive line. So you give yourself a little bit more options there and the ability to sort of protect yourself in case, something happens with Barmore.
Jaquelin Roy, there's a name I have not heard in some time. Yeah, those are some of those guys that were the rotational pieces used out of desperation last year on the line, Mike. I don't. My big concern is good first day in defense. Obviously, not enough offense. How are they going to handle? How do you think they handle the offensive line going forward? There's some talent left at guard. There's nothing left at offensive tackle, and if we spend 5 more minutes arguing over the length of Will Campbell's arms or his wingspan on here, somebody's going to slap a lawsuit on us here at the station. So, look, it's unbelievable. So looking at all that, how would you expect the Patriots to tackle offense and offensive line the rest of this free agency, and how that could affect their draft plans?
Well, I mean, you're seeing the wide receiver prices are stupid. Diami Brown just signed for, I think, 1 year, $12 million. So I'm thinking if I'm Slayton, my price is probably $15 or $16 million a year now. Palmer signed for $3 and $36 in Buffalo. I didn't see the guaranteed numbers, but again, that's a pretty healthy chunk of change. So that price went up a little bit over there. The question is, how do you feel about Tet? Would you want Tet at 4? Would you want to try to trade back and get Tet? Do you feel comfortable with some of the other options in the draft? Steph Diggs is out there, but again, that's a half-year thing because he had the knee surgery in October, I think. Brandon Ayuk, I think, would be a conversation to revisit. Same situation, though. He got hurt in late October, so he'll be probably back before the start of October. But when's he got back to being, one of the most dynamic route runners in the NFL? Is that next year, or are you doing that for a year later? So it's not going to be easy. With regard to wide receiver, it's not going to be easy with regard to tackle. But at least the way I look at it now is, depending on what happens at center with David Andrews, and there's some internet rumblings, and of course when we came out of the combine, it was one of the things, the conversations that we had was they seem to be in the market for a center. But if they can stabilize that from right tackle through left guard, and then you're only having to worry about one position on the offensive line versus 3, sometimes 4 last year, it's not perfect, but Josh can work around that a hell of a lot better than Alex would be able to work around the debacle that was last year when, DeMontre Jacobs, poor kid's having to play 15 games as a starting right tackle and had no business doing that. Ben Brown signed off the street, your revolving door at left guard. Michael Jordan, starts for you for all those games and then ends up getting cut. They can't live that way. If you have more stability there, I think it just makes it much easier to sort of craft an offense.
Mike, I don't know if you heard, but our own Greg Hill this morning reported that his sources tell him that if Travis Hunter's there at 4, the Patriots would pounce. And I know there's some people reacting to the Carlton Davis signing oh, does that affect that? Do they see Travis Hunter as a wide receiver? Is he a number one wide receiver? Any thoughts on what they've done today and maybe how that would impact the way they view Travis Hunter?
I mean, I think you sign Carlton Davis, he's not a nickel corner. So unless you wanted to play Travis Hunter inside, which doesn't seem to make a lot of sense, it would seem that were Greg correct with his information, and I'm not doubting it by any stretch of the imagination, then it would seem to me that they'd view him as a wide receiver. And look, you talk to a lot of people in Indy who are like, he's the number one wide receiver on the board, higher than Ted, higher than some of these other guys. And considering the fact that he hasn't actually been coached to play wide receiver, he spent most of his practice time on defense, meetings in defensive rooms. He just didn't have the time, and they would just tell him what to do when he got out on the field on offense. Like, that's pretty appealing because his ball skills are phenomenal. He's a 4-4-ish guy, like great body control. Like, what could he be in a year or two, with some real coaching, with that sort of athleticism? So if that's the case, I mean, that would be appealing for sure.
He is Mike Giardi, Boston Sports Journal. Appreciate you joining us on a Monday. Usually you're our Friday afternoon guest. And let you get back to your writing. I'm sure Greg is whipping you a little bit, telling you to get more blogs up, more analysis up. So we'll let you get back to it, Mike. Thanks for joining us.